So we're here with Marc Seltzer, the Montreal chapter chair of Democrats Abroad. You want to start off a bit by talking what Democrats Abroad's mission is and how they've been active in this presidential election?
Sure. So Democrats Abroad is actually part of the Democratic Party. It's the official party as it exists outside of the United States, and there are chapters all over the world. Montreal chapter is pretty strong, and we have about 2,000 members, almost 2,000 members. And that's just people who want to be part of the party. Then, of course, there's a lot of American citizens who live in this area. You have to be a citizen of the United States to be in Democrats Abroad. But the purpose, as we see it, is to get people registered to vote, to get them interested in the elections and in signing up to help, call bank, and participate in our government there.
Mm-hmm. But what are some of the challenges you face in terms of getting expats here involved in the process? And I know, like, the voter registration, as a fellow American, I know that the voter registration process to go and get your absentee ballot from even Canada is very, very difficult, and it's a several step process. So what are the ways in which Democrats Abroad specifically facilitates that?
Yeah, it can be difficult. It's gotten much better in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. So we use votefromabroad.org, which is a great website that will help you fill out the form. You can print it out and mail it in. So that's what we tell everyone to do. It's actually a nonpartisan website, so anyone can use it. But we really try to get people there. And then if they have problems there, we have a help desk. We have people that are willing to go to work to try to understand what is it about the state rules that's creating difficulty for someone who, is an American citizen, has a right to vote, but in some way isn't fitting into the system where they're getting their ballot. So we help people, and we have staffing to help. And some of the problems, you kind of forget that, we're here, we're really comfortable, Americans fit, Quebec is wonderful, Canada is wonderful, we fit in well, yeah. We're part of the culture. I've become an Canadian citizen, I've been here long enough, and that's part of my life. But it's easy to cross the border and go visit. It can be difficult to vote. You've got to get your material, you've got to get it on time, you've got to be connected enough to understand what you're looking at. So, we have activities sometimes where we'll have people speak. We have congressmen, congresswomen, other people come up from the United States and do forums. So there's a variety of things that we can do to keep people connected.
Why aren't there direct voting locations set up for population centers around the world where there are significant numbers of Americans?
Right. It's a great idea. It's been discussed generally. I haven't been in on any conversations about exactly why it's not done. Now, our voting is essentially organized per state. It's the state. Right. And county
registration deadlines.
In terms of that, but also even just making those decisions about how we're going to serve our population. It's done at the state level rather than, the federal government. So for states to think about reaching out to places in the world, it's just a more difficult process. This time there's a discussion of cybersecurity and whether the Russians are interfering in the election campaign, and that's also a certain risk for the voting process. And so maybe that is also a question once you start putting the actual voting apparatus outside the United States.
Because any effort to, install these voting locations, as I know Canada does in certain population centers, to vote at embassies or consulates, mainly in the U.S., but also in other countries, this would have to be a bipartisan effort. And, foreseeably, yes, it would have to be a bipartisan effort to implement this. Do you think that the Republican Party is not perhaps committed to this idea of enfranchising more people living abroad? Because statistically speaking, expats tend to be more left-wing. I think we had a participation rate for people voting abroad among Democrats that was far surpassing Republicans in each of the last elections, especially from Canada. Mm-hmm. Is this something you feel is there a will for it on the other side? Is there a will to enfranchise more people living abroad on the Republican side?
Yeah. I'm not sure what to say about that. We have not been thinking about it that way. You remind me of kind of a funny thing, which is the CBC contacted me and said, actually it was through the American consulate in Montreal, that they wanted to have a forum with a Republican and a Democrat, and maybe I would be the Democrat that would debate. And they said, but they're having trouble locating a Republican, just locating a Republican. And they asked me, did I know of any? And over the years, at times, I have had a little contact, and I kind of looked and was like, no, I have nobody who I wouldn't know who to reach out to, and they didn't either, which is amazing because they're making an effort to find that. So yes, it's very lopsided, especially right now.
And the Republicans abroad, even though the institution does exist, it doesn't have a voting recognition as a delegation like it does in the Democratic primary as well.
Yeah. Now, one thing I would say, for example, in our convention of Democrats abroad, and we have a platform of issues that we try to advance, there was a real focus on voting rights, okay? So we're talking about the Republican efforts to disenfranchise people, to set up roadblocks in being able to vote. So we care a lot about that. That was a big part of what we did. We had initiatives to try to deal with that. We didn't really take on the idea of outside of the United States. We were looking at it inside the United States.
It's more of a pressing concern at the moment.
So I don't think that we feel generally that it's so difficult to vote outside now. 10 years ago, it was terrible. I tried to vote from Africa. It was very difficult.
Yeah.
But really with Vote From Abroad, that's helped a lot. And I think, at least in a place like Canada, it's pretty effective. Yeah.
Okay. What were some of the issues that the Democrats abroad, Canada specifically, focused on this election to get included in the Democratic Party platform?
Yeah. So as I said, the voting rights was really important, and everybody I know is offended by the idea of trying to take the vote away or make it more difficult to vote. So that is not a hard one for Democrats and many independents and Republicans to.
Well, opposition to enfranchisement is never phrased as that way. It's always under some other pretext when it does happen.
Yeah, it is, but it's pretty clear what it is. And I think, there was concern when the Justice Department wasn't able to supervise some of the areas where there had been a real problem in the past after a Supreme Court decision, but the federal courts have come in and looked at the specific things that Republican states have done, and they've disallowed many of those. So in the end, I think that the U.S. federal government hasn't abandoned the idea of protecting voting rights, and it's okay. But we were certainly riled up by all those efforts and offended by it. So that's one. The other one that I think is great is gerrymandering and the idea of organizing the districts, like the congressional districts where we choose our congressmen, congresswomen, organizing them at the state level by the governor, by the party in power. Republicans have succeeded in taking a lot of state government governorships, lieutenant governor, the senior officers, and they've been able to redraw the lines. And it's a terrible thing for our democracy, because what it does is it makes safe seats. And in a safe seat, somebody can be outrageous, and maybe they even pander to the most, outrageous people in their district who are really focused. And, that's terrible. You don't have real elections with debates over the things that the majority want, slight adjustments in, the direction of the country. California and some other states have tried to work against that, have come up with more independent line drawing, so you're not drawing a Republican district.
Yeah. Does the focus, though, on states as the relevant unit of voting in the presidential election process kind of fuel that a bit in a way? Because we're looking at, obviously this has been done for beginning of American history, where the Electoral College puts the focus on the states as the relevant unit of voting. I don't know if there's a genuine effort within the Democratic Party right now to kind of fight against that and go about in a way where, because let's face it, they're not winning these states from Republicans at the moment. They have control of most state legislatures and most state governorships. Is there
and they've created control of the House to some extent because of this. I mean, they've earned it, but they've also manufactured it using
gerrymandering. Exactly. And I mean, something like 90% of House, representative districts are simply uncompetitive in either way. So would there be an effort, you think, in the foreseeable future to challenge the very idea that states are what we should be focusing on here as a delegation rather than just one person, one vote.
Yeah. I don't know. It's funny. So in my position, when you get involved as a volunteer and you have a group and you are reaching out, publicizing your club, your group, and your activities and your goals, you're still really focused on following the path. What's my path to help everyone?
The institution that you
right, and so most of our energy and the information coming to us is how to use the rules as they are and take make best opportunity. So I don't see it, but that's not to say there aren't people in academic situations who are working on that topic. And as I said, California with their system, for example, where it's not going to be a Democrat against a Republican for the U.S. Senate. It's 2 Democrats because they were the highest winning primary candidates. So, it starts to change, and it's an example for other states if they don't like what they have and they see what other states have. So I'm not sure where the change is going to come from. We do need progress, but I don't feel it at the level of, and we haven't talked about it that much at the level of even of leadership of Democrats abroad.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm asking about this particularly happening in the foreseeable future, because obviously it's something that's been debated and talked about for election cycle after election cycle, but obviously with the political impediments to it and getting both parties to work on it, this election actually, presents a unique opportunity for Democrats to, something that was, not even thought of as possible 2 years ago, to take back both the Senate and the House. In that event, do you see that? First of all, do you see that as a realistic possibility right now, that the Democrats could take both chambers?
I think it's certainly a possibility. I think that the chance of taking the Senate is strong, and
what people miss too is the Sandersman was actually, and it wasn't just him, but it was this aspect of the left that he was playing off of, and this group that he tapped into, and to get them involved in the political process. They were actually extraordinarily successful in bringing the Democratic Party platform more left-wing. Now maybe we can talk if they felt that they had the room to do it now with such an extreme candidate on the other side, but even so, you have very diverse cross sections of society. You feel Black Lives Matter having input into the platform. You feel feminist groups, LGBT groups, and just people that Bernie Sanders and the working class, poor voters that were not involved in the political process before, now finding a way to get involved in this platform, and then the writing of it. So that that is something that I feel is missed. And my question now is why? Because I have one opinion on this about Jill Stein maybe not working for this movement in any sort of way, and now wanting to come in and sort of pick up the pieces of it and say, I'm going to be your next Bernie Sanders. I have a problem with this in the sense that the Green Party, more broadly speaking, is a national party that trots out a presidential candidate every 4 years without making any effort to build institutions and political capacity at various levels of government. And you can't simply be effective if you don't do that. So what is your... To my question, what is your opinion on these third-party candidates now that a lot of people are seriously considering?
Some of it is personality, and some of it is the political space that is, it is there. So, for example, when I think of the Libertarian Party, they've got Gary Johnson and William Weld. Now, as far as I'm concerned, William Weld is very bright, very moderate, totally legitimate person, leader. If they had flipped that somehow, I think Republicans could say, oh, this is a real Republican Party. This is where we should go with our vote. And there could have been a place for those angry Republicans, because William Weld was governor of Massachusetts as a Republican, but he's really intelligent and he's worldly and he is able. And Gary Johnson is not. Not a real criticism of him, but he is not knowledgeable.
Clearly.
In the same way as people who run for high office or are senators or congressmen. He doesn't have that. He's got a looking down from the State House view. So, it's just different. But, he was sunk. He's hard to take seriously, I think, because of that. Jill Stein, so I continue to think that Barack Obama and now Hillary Clinton are, for example, on climate change, global warming, environmental policy. I think that they are looking to go as far to the left, as far in a progressive direction as the country can go with them. For me, it's not the leader or the party that is slowing down. Jill Stein would offer nothing more, as far as I'm concerned, green than Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton. The difference is that they are dealing with the country they have to pull with them. They are dealing with the Congress that has to ratify the treaty. She is not. Jill Stein is not. She can talk like someone writing a book. It has a value, but it's not the same as political leadership. Mm-hmm. So that to me is the problem. And when people misunderstand that, and when liberals criticize Obama or Clinton, I think that they're unable to see that Republicans or mainstream Americans on the more conservative side, whatever, are not sold on the agenda that Obama or Clinton would be advancing. They're not sure. They're not willing to go that far. That's the reins on, I think, on what Obama and what Clinton will do. It has nothing to do with somebody speaking for something, because there are many, Al Gore, many people speaking for progress on environmental policy. Terrific, but they're not bringing a Republican Congress with them. So.
Well, the two-party system, accumulation of time over very many years of us having a two-party system in the United States have become the accepted and most viable outlets for translating your political ideals or concerns into actionable policy. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think that it's ideal that we only have two parties to do that, and that either any political vision gets thrown under one of the two. But given this institution that we have, and it's more about obviously because I shouldn't. People often expect times in voting for a third party candidate that they should agree 100% with everything that the candidate stands for. Even though none of that, or very little of that, would get translated into policies that affect the whole country. Mm-hmm. See, if I'm going to go to vote as someone that has a particular ideology or ideal of what the party system or what the political system in general should look like, it's going to be very different from anybody else. And so people approach it that their leaders should reflect them rather than their leaders as a public servant in the traditional sense of a public servant. That's what you are, civil servant to translate public concerns into policies that affect the whole country. And people expect oftentimes that their ideals are, so logical in a sense, and it's very sort of selfish in a way to expect the leaders to, reflect only your own ideals without worrying about the policies and how they reflect the whole country. So for Jill Stein to come in and try to tap into what the Bernie Sanders movement worked for and actually built a viable campaign around.
Right? Yeah, so it has been a fascinating campaign. First of all, it was fascinating with Bernie Sanders making a real run of it, a challenge to Hillary Clinton. Early on, we didn't know if she would have a cakewalk, that it would be so easy that she would be unopposed, and then it turned out he was very successful, and in quite a different way, the way he had his rallies and was a great orator, and that was really interesting. And then for Trump to come along and wipe out his Republican opposition, and then be such a crazy candidate this whole time, it's been really unusual. But I think that a lot of this idea that the election is a choice of the lesser evil, or that Hillary Clinton is untrustworthy, I don't buy it, and I don't know that there's much there. For me, that's a manufactured political strategy that the Republicans have, by design, picked up on little things like Benghazi or her email and tried to keep them in the press and to ask strange questions about them to make them into terrible episodes in American history or in her past, when they are not profound. The loss of life in Benghazi is profound, but her role in it does not rise to the level of what we traditionally think of as some kind of a political scandal or a failure in leadership or something like that. So I think that a lot of the mistrust is manufactured in Republican talking points and meeting groups, and that it may give away. If she is elected president and she takes that leadership role, that people may see her for who she is, a competent and serious leader. The same way Barack Obama has emerged, despite criticism and despite enemies, as a very credible, great president for his 8 years in office. And I'm glad to see his approval ratings up over 50%. I think they should be a lot higher, but he is constantly constantly under attack, and that's the role of a modern president. That's the way it is. We don't shield them, we don't honor them just because of their office. It's all a political battle. Maybe a different, it's not an answer, but it's a different take on the question, is the press has followed this idea, which I think is Republican generated, that we have two flawed candidates, that it's a lesser of two evils election, that Hillary Clinton is not trustworthy, flawed in some ways. And I actually don't buy into that at all. Now, of course, I'm part of the Democratic Party, so but I tend to think of that as being really manufactured, really a strategy
it's
of
something that third party candidates have to play on too.
Her. Yes, and then they play on that. But I think that they delegitimized her with picking up on Benghazi, which there's just nothing there. The emails, which, it's arguable in different ways as to whether there's anything meaningful there or not, in a profound way. Of course, in little ways you can argue about it. But if that's really more what it is, that she's a perfectly legitimate civil servant who has worked a career using brains, education, experience, connections to serve, and has done it pretty well, then part of what we express as the surge of Bernie Sanders and the interest in third parties is kind of a tarnishing of the image manufactured by the other side as part of the competition. And if that's the case, then it might not be worth, legitimately funding another party, founding another party, those kinds of things that they may never get there, because I don't know if that position is going to last for 20 years. If Hillary is president, some of those things may die away when she's up there as commander-in-chief doing the role. That idea that but she did something with her emails, she said they were personal, and so she deleted them, but maybe they weren't, it's does that compare with some of the bigger questions? So for me, I wonder again I think Sanders legitimately spoke for something, an issue like how trade affected, as Trump did, how trade, we can easily say trade is good for America, and it is, but we don't mean trade is good for everyone in America. Trade is good for upper class, for upper middle class, for people in jobs that are exporters, but it's not good for people who are now competing with other Americans for the lower wage jobs the same way in the old industrial revolution model. Mm-hmm. You were just a worker in a factory and there were lots of workers, so there are beefs, there are problems, there are concerns, but I don't know that that's what's wrong with Hillary Clinton. I think it's a political strategy that tarnished her image. And I don't know that that's enough to create a third party to say, so for me, I just don't, again, I don't see it as the power that is somewhere. I think the power is with people in the Democratic Party and in the Republican Party and moderates who pay attention, understand issues, are really thinking where the country needs to go. They want a trade deal. Trade is very important to generating wealth. Now there's this also concern. Well, yes, but it has to include the middle class. Maybe we didn't know. I think those are things that are agreed upon by, educated and bureaucrats and professionals and various people. And it takes a generation to work those things through to make things a little better in one way or another. I'm not sure, again, that that's that I see that as a thing that a party can advance, a separate party with a separate agenda. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, nice talking to you.
Yeah, you too.